Thank you, and hello, everybody. We're going to talk about how to talk so others will listen and listen so others can talk. You might have seen on the first sheet that or the first, whatever this is, that I was Conflict Management Officer in District 4, and we set that up because we had a couple of clubs with strong issues, and the governor at the time decided to have someone be available for them. So a team, it's a small group of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose. So this sounds like Zonta, it sounds like our clubs, our districts, and international. So if we feel this way, what gets in the way if we're working towards a common cause or common purpose? Well, information overload, you know what that's like. We get too much coming in, lack of time, lack of energy, message congruency, or often message incongruency, where we're not getting the same messages all the time or from all the same people. The two areas we're going to touch on briefly in this barrier to communication are personality differences and lack of trust. Okay, so we'd be fine if they weren't so different. We hear that a whole lot. If only people believed, acted, responded the way we did, everything would be okay. But we don't tend to have that happen because people are all different. And we react to people as a result of how we make sense of the situation coming from my experiences. So things that upset us usually have more to do with us than with the person on the other side. So we want to go from, why would she treat me that way, to trying to figure out, why would she react, think, deal with me that way? There are generally 4 different styles of personality, and you'll find them having different names in different contexts. The one I always use is one called the BEST. So it's B is bold, and that's an aggressive or takes charge person. The expressive, creative, and artistic uses ideas versus facts or data. Sympathetic is empathetic, avoids stress and conflict, and the technical is logical, careful, and orderly. Now, obviously, having some of each of these people in our clubs would be very helpful because we need lots of different kinds of skills. But what we don't know how to do is deal with people outside of our own personality trait. So this leads to my favorite theory, the theory of separate realities. Usually we decide people do things for the same reason we would do them and judge them accordingly and have expectations based on that. But, and we'll be looking at this today, it's really important to realize that people react from different places and that we'll be more successful in dealing with them once we understand this and react accordingly. Now you can see I have my father in parentheses there, and that's because this always reminds me of my father. He would say, that person is brilliant. He thinks exactly like I do. Well, that might be nice, but we can't really alter other people's personalities, much less our own, by becoming aware of their differences and removing negative judgments when they react differently. We can increase positive interaction and reduce conflict, and as a result, be more comfortable and secure and have better communication. But this relationship would be great if it weren't for you. We hear that a whole lot. It's a real title of a book about personal relationships, and often when people come in to talk to me, that's what they say. If only that person would be different, this would be great. In order to communicate, however, we need to learn how to work with that other person, what's effective with them, rather than trying to make them be us. The person's task focus needs to be given reasons, not feelings. The person whose relationship focus needs to be addressed in a relational way. The very first company we worked with, the CEO was a very technical person, and she needed facts before she could deal with solutions. And once her staff learned that, things went much more smoothly in that organization. So we have to be careful about our assumptions that we all work out of the same motivation or experience. And then we react according to what it would mean if I did that. Such as, I kept you waiting, I must not value you, versus my family was always late, so I'm just used to being late. So those are very important things that we're looking at in terms of finding better ways to understand and to relate to people. In organizations, we need to take advantage of these different strengths also. We need people who like detailed work as well as those who look at the big picture. We need creative people as well as analytical ones. We need people who work best in groups as well as those who think on their own, and we need to figure out where and when to use those people. So once we understand personality differences, it's easier to build trust. Trust is the most important ingredient in working with a team. So I'd like you to take a moment now and just jot down an example of one time you felt trust in a friend or somebody in Zonta who may also be a friend, and one example of when you felt trusted by a friend. Just take a short minute to do that. And also think about, how does that feel? Now, when we talk about trust, what are we really talking about? With trust, teams get to the point where they can be completely open with one another. If I know the truth about what you think, believe, feel, want, I then know I can count on what you say and move accordingly. I know you've got my back. It takes time to develop trust, and in fact, trust shouldn't be developed very quickly because we need to know if this is a person or a situation that we can trust. So it's just as bad to trust immediately as it is to not trust at all. Because trusting means being careful, being comfortable, being vulnerable with each other. Showing our weaknesses, admitting our deficiencies, asking for help in a situation that feels safe. So there are some ways that we can build trust. We build trust by narrowing the gap between our intentions and our behavior. So saying it is not enough, acting on it is very important. On really having open lines of communication, declaring your intentions to others and inviting feedback. We've done this at our board meetings where there is a feedback sheet on how the meetings have gone after each board meeting, and the next meetings are based on the needs or concerns stated in that report. Accept disagreements, differences of opinion, and conflict. When things go wrong and problems arise, just work on creating solutions. Keep confidential information confidential. Let others know what you stand for and what you value. Create an open environment. Make it safe for others to share with you. Maintain a high level of integrity and honesty. Know yourself and how others perceive you and your actions, and build on your competencies and accept your limitations. Build credibility with others by being consistent and reliable, and avoid micromanaging. That gives the message that I don't trust you. And this is really about conflict. When we talk about effective communication, until there's conflict, most people, most teams do okay. But once there's conflict, we have to learn how to deal with it. And to deal with conflict, we need good communication, we need trust, and we need assertiveness. Because if we can't handle conflict, we can't move forward. It limits communication and deteriorates trust. Trust and conflict management open up communication. Teams that trust one another aren't afraid to engage in passionate dialogues about issues that are key to the organization's success. They don't hesitate to disagree with, challenge, and question one another, all in the spirit of finding the best answers, discovering the truth, and making great decisions. So we're not looking in Zonta, we're all intelligent women. We're not looking for total agreement. We're looking for how we can work out the best way to run Zonta. So we look at conflict. You know, what words come to mind about conflict? What do you think of when we raise that? Well, usually it's negative. Most of the words that come up are negative. And when a team doesn't trust each other, the results of conflict are negative. They're destructive arguments laced with pride, politics, competition, trying to win an argument, not listening to anyone's point of view, and then venting when others are outside of the room rather than stating with everybody there what you believe and think about a certain situation. You can't work it out if there is no honesty there. So would this surprise you? The absence of conflict is not harmony, it's apathy. Conflict over issues is natural and necessary. So jot down again some words that could define conflict in a positive way. Sort of think about it in terms of the Chinese definition of crisis as danger and opportunity. What might the opportunity be here? Well, positive conflict can result in productive, passionate, unfiltered debate about issues of importance to the club. With productive conflict, the only purpose is to produce the best possible solution in the shortest amount of time. And as you look at these positive statements about conflict, there's less anger and depression. I don't have to get mad or feel bad because I know that you're listening to me and you've considered what I have to say. I get greater respect from others because I'm being honest and open. There's less fear. It's a safe situation to disagree. Greater sense of personal strength. These are all really, really important. So what are sources of conflict? Well, we go back to the beginning of this discussion. Poor communication, and that can include unclear responsibilities, differences in goals that have never been discussed, differences in methods and styles, and perceptions or opinions. Conflict of interest in using these same old solutions over and over, and we certainly get that in our club. Someone will come up with a new solution. We'll say, no, we want to do it the same old way. Of course, doing it the same old way gets you the same old conflict or the same old irresolution. So looking at different personalities and perceptions, we can think about how to deal with those sources of conflict. And conflict is created when you have independence and differences. It's a fact of life, it's no one's fault, and it develops when the concerns of different team members appear incompatible. But we're going to look at ways that they could become more compatible. So what's interdependence? It's the need to work together to satisfy concerns of the team. It's high when the team makes decisions that affect all members. There's an interdependence there. It is less likely to be there, and so there's less conflict when people are working on their own. We have decided that one of the ways to deal with this in our club is to let committees make recommendations rather than discussing every single issue as a large group. Differences, varying responsibilities, values, temperaments, sources of information, experience, that old diversity coin again. The more diverse, the more conflict. However, more diversity also provides the opportunity for richer understanding of and approaches to issues. It gives us better and more ways to look at situations. So, positive conflict. Teams that engage in conflict have lively, interesting meetings, extract and exploit the ideas of all team members, solve real problems quickly, minimize politics, and put critical topics on the table for discussion. When everyone is above board, people are able to work things out much more quickly than when we're wondering how people are thinking about things or what might happen. Now, the teams that fear conflict have boring meetings. They create environments where back-channel politics and personal attacks thrive. They ignore controversial issues so they never get taken care of. One of the companies I've worked with for many years, when I moved in to work with them, there was an issue that had been causing anger and anxiety for 10 years that people were avoiding at all costs. We had to resolve that issue before we could move forward, and once they moved forward, they became much more cohesive as a team. You want to tap into all the opinions and perspectives of team members. People need to know that they've been heard. There are different conflict management styles. They all have a use at different times. Avoidance, that's when people don't want to talk about it. Sometimes that's important because there's no time to talk it out and to have every single possibility be created. At other times, it's a way of not dealing, and it comes up over and over. Native Americans have a theory that if you don't deal with something, it will continue to come up till you deal with it. So you might as well not avoid it. Competition. That can be where the people who really are the doers and the shakers can move things along quickly, or it can lead to what feels like bullying. Accommodation can be a way of one person saying, I'll go along with what you have to say. We need to be important there, however, and make sure that that's what we mean. Otherwise, passive-aggressive behavior can ensue. In compromise, everyone gives up something. That can be okay as long as you are willing to give up the thing you're agreeing to give up and you won't resent it later. And collaboration is working to solve the problem together and honoring the other person and their points of view. So to manage conflict, what do we do? Well, we need to keep constructive criticism over issues from being personal. Look at it as the issue, not the person. More rather than less information and debated facts are helpful. And in Zonta right now, Lynn McKenzie is doing this by having conference calls with governors and other officers to talk about the issues coming up, to work on the ways we can deal with it, and to let everybody have a voice. That way we really tune into and buy into more of what's being discussed and what's coming up. We want to inject some humor in this. It's not always serious. Conflict is not a dirty word. Reinforce common goals and resolve issues without forcing consensus. Sometimes we are just not going to get a vote that everybody agrees with. We may have to go with the majority opinion or the one that makes the most sense or the one that has the person willing to deal with it right then. So when we're going to manage conflict, what do we need to do? Well, we'll need to look at the context of the conflict. What's motivating the other person? What beliefs are influencing their perspective? What limitations are there? Fears, lack of skills, stresses, pressures, and ask these questions of ourselves as well. Why is this causing me problems? Why am I so invested in this? What's the issue here? Some more effective ways of dealing and managing this conflict is to remember to control your temper and emotional response. Demonstrate your respect for the other party's feelings. Validate that the conflict's real to them, no matter how trivial it may seem to you. Embracing conflict builds honest relationships. Understand the issues. Don't react impulsively when faced with a conflict situation. And focus on changing behaviors, not on people. Pick your battles. Not all conflicts are manageable, and not all battles are yours. Decide on where you need to step in and what you need to do. And search for a common goal or ground. Know your options. Select your best options. Attempt to work for a win-win solution, or at least one that's acceptable to both parties. And you can do this by asking open-ended questions and demonstrating you've heard and understood others' goals and objectives. You need to be direct, honest, appropriate, respectful, and focus on your own feelings and reactions as well as the other's feelings and reactions. Communicate the situation in terms of the consequences it has for you. Respectfully let the other person know what impact their behavior has on you. For instance, when you're late to meetings, we do not get as much done as we could if you were on time. Express your feelings in I, not you. Don't label. You would not say you're rude and disrespectful. You might say, I feel frustrated and think that you don't value my time when you're late to meetings. Listen to the other's response. Paraphrase what you heard and check to be sure that you're hearing it accurately. Make your own request, not demand, directly and respectfully. For instance, when many members were being late, the request from our then president was, if you want to have time to come in and chat, you need to be here at 6. If you get here at 6:30, we are starting the meeting. Will that be all right with everyone? And it was voted in, and so people really pay attention to that. Sometimes a person will distract you or bring in other issues. You always do that, or last time you said this. Use the technique we call the broken record. Acknowledge what the person said and repeat your point. You think I always say that. What I'm saying right now is I'm very concerned about the meeting starting late. It means that we don't finish at a reasonable time. Be prepared to continue and renew the discussion often. Margaret Thatcher said you may have to fight a battle more than once in order to win it. So how do we work on conflict management in our clubs? Well, first we analyze the situation. So first examine your own feelings and goals. Then identify both your own and the other person's perspective, and work together to diagnose and clarify the critical issues. Plan a strategy. How are you going to evaluate your goals and perspectives and that of the other person? How might they clash? How might they overlap in order to determine your best approach? Prepare your strategy. Apply it to a problem-solving framework and rehearse it. And then implement your strategy. Set a constructive and positive tone. Establish some common ground. Use good communication skills. Define and discuss the issues. Empathize with the other person's perspective. Brainstorm alternative solutions. Come to a mutually satisfactory agreement. Plan for a follow-up and reevaluation. And if you can do it, let it go at that point. So the effective tactics are maintaining eye contact and being aware of body language. We may say a different thing if we are holding our body in one way versus what we are saying. Explain your concerns in a descriptive, not judgmental manner. Supply only the relative data using I statements. Really listen. That is just one of the most important things that you can do, is really listen. And from here, as we try to develop a way to deal with conflict, there are some conflict management tips I'd like to share with you. If you anticipate the conflict, because sometimes we know how people are going to react, but we act as if it's new. And we want to respond to the people, not just react to them. Think it out so that we can truly respond. So sustaining your relationship with others requires meeting the needs of all parties. If things get too heated, rather than continuing to fight it out, take a break. That allows people to think it out and, rather than fighting for their position, really work on moving forward. Separate the problem from the person and discuss one issue at a time. Be specific. If the person is upset, some ways that you might get stuck are these. You might react and become defensive. Take on the emotions of the upset person and vent them back. And this actually gives her power over you and how you are going to behave instead of maintaining your own feelings. Instead of responding, you're reacting. I had this earlier in the year when a member had taken on a very big task but had volunteered to do it. And about halfway through came to me and said, "This is all I can do. You have to do the rest." I started to get angry. I started to get upset. I started to try to figure out, how am I going to handle this? I took a breath and said, wait a minute, I'll feel bad if this doesn't get done, but it is not an emergency. And so I said to her, I'm really sorry that you can't follow this through. Do you have any ideas of someone who could pick this up and do the rest of the task? She thought about it for a few minutes, came up with someone. They worked very well together, and the task got done in a very wonderful way. Sometimes we pacify. It's a subconscious attempt to get the other person to calm down. This, however, often causes escalation because the person feels encouraged in their position. Sometimes there's a lack of pacing. We might use a calm and quiet voice when the other person is upset, and that doesn't work. It often infuriates her because it minimizes her distress. It minimizes the amount of distress she is feeling. We want to match intensity and then soften it, and knowing that understanding is not the same as agreeing. If I listen carefully, let you know I heard you, I then get to state my response to what you said. If you are the upset person, Start the conversation by owning your contribution to the upset. Share your view of the main source of conflict. And then, and this is difficult, show compassionate courage. Say what you need to say, even if you're afraid it will hurt or upset the other person, and say it in a straightforward, compassionate way. And now to help with this, let's look at making a plan about what you're willing to do in the following week. Become more aware of how you manage conflicts, and then think of some more creative skills and strategies for successful conflict management. Those of us who are governors will be doing this as we get ready for our conferences coming up, because conflict continues to come up, particularly as people get more anxious. So think about this. Do remember that it needs to be realistic, however. It reminds me of when I was newly married and we had a fight about doing the dishes. And at the end of the fight I said, if you really hate doing dishes, I'll do them from now on. I'll always do the dishes. You don't have to worry about it. I got up the next day and said, you know, I wish I could do that, but it's not realistic. I'm going to be mad at you if I'm the one always doing the dishes. We have to work on a different way to solve this issue. As you look at this plan that you make, and feel free to get back to me. You have my phone number and you can get an email address. Please feel free to get back to me to discuss your plan and discuss where you get stuck. There are some people who bother us and we always have a hard time dealing with them. It's important to find out why. But even among the best teams, conflict is at least a little uncomfortable. No matter how clear everyone is that the conflict they're engaging in is focused on issues, not personalities, it's inevitable that they'll feel under some degree of personal attack. It's just unrealistic for a person to say, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with your approach to the project, and not expect to feel some degree of personal rejection. However, keep in mind that being uncomfortable doesn't mean being wrong. It means that you are not used to this behavior and you need to continue to practice it and get some feedback on how you're doing. Okay, well, thank you for being here for this, and I'm going to give you my email address so that if you have questions, you can get back to me. You have my phone number. My email address is lfogarty, it's L-F-O-G-A-R-T-Y, Zonta, @gmail.com, and I would be delighted to chat with any of you who have thoughts about this, questions, or comments. Thanks for your time, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.